The metallic scrape of vintage buckles dragging across polished concrete cut through the morning briefing like nails on a chalkboard, and 43 Navy SEALs turned in perfect unison to stare. Rebecca Mills kept her eyes down, canvas tool bag slung over one shoulder, arms loaded with olive drab webbing that smelled like mothballs and gun oil. The M1956 load-bearing equipment looked exactly like what it was. 60-year-old surplus gear pulled from a storage locker that hadn't seen daylight since Vietnam ended. Commander Jason Trask stopped mid-sentence. He'd been explaining the advantages of the new modular plate carrier system, gesturing at a mannequin wearing 35 pounds of cutting-edge tactical equipment. Now his hand froze in the air, index finger extended toward the interruption shuffling past the rear bleachers. Did someone order props from a museum? Lieutenant Bradley Moss said it loud enough to carry. Laughter rippled through the pavilion. 43 phones stayed in 43 pockets, but 43 pairs of eyes tracked the woman in faded khaki work pants and an oversized contractor polo shirt as she tried to reach the historical display corner without causing more disruption. She almost made it. "Hold on." Trask's voice had that particular edge that comes from 8 years of telling people what to do in life-or-death situations. "Ma'am, this is a classified equipment brief. Civilians require escort in this facility." Rebecca stopped, turned. Her face showed nothing. No embarrassment, no irritation, just blank professional courtesy. She was 34, but could pass for younger, except for the eyes. Those eyes had seen something that aged them past her years. "Equipment technician, sir. Historical gear maintenance." She shifted the canvas bag, pulled a laminated badge from her shirt pocket. "Contractor ID 7743B. I'm setting up the comparison display for this afternoon's demonstration." Trask walked down from the podium, boots clicking on concrete with parade ground precision. 6'2", 215 pounds, black hair buzzed, edged to stubble. Uniform so crisp it could draw blood. His SEAL trident caught the overhead fluorescence as he moved, polished to a mirror shine. He took the badge, studied it longer than necessary, handed it back without looking at her face. Historical gear. He turned to address his audience, voice dripping with theatrical curiosity. "Anyone here think we should go back to using equipment that couldn't stop a .22? More laughter. Moss leaned forward on the bleacher, elbows on knees, grinning like he'd just heard the setup for a punchline he already knew. Chief Petty Officer Vincent Harlow, 42 years old, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent 2 decades in bad weather doing worse things, raised his hand in mock question. "Sir, does the museum lady know this is the 21st century?" Rebecca said nothing. She moved to the corner where folding tables waited, began arranging the vintage equipment with careful precision. M1956 suspenders, canvas ammunition pouches, old steel canteen in a fraying cover. Each piece placed with deliberate attention, hands steady, breathing controlled. Trask wasn't finished. He picked up one of the modern plate carriers from the display mannequin, held it up like a teacher with a visual aid. "This is Level 4 ballistic protection, ceramic composite plates, Malle webbing for modular attachment, integrated hydration system, quick release system for water operations. This represents 50 years of innovation designed to keep our people alive." He walked to Rebecca's corner, picked up the M1956 suspenders between thumb and forefinger like they might carry disease. "This is canvas and rust. It represents nothing except bad decisions and dead technology." The room laughed again. Phones started coming out now. First 1, then 5, then a dozen, recording. This was content. This was a story they'd tell later. Petty Officer Second Class Jordan Wright, 24 years old and 3 months out of buds, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Something about this felt wrong. The woman wasn't reacting, wasn't defending. Herself wasn't showing any emotion at all. That kind of control was unusual. That kind of control was trained. 30 yards away, Master Chief Petty Officer Dennis Kowalski watched from the back row with different eyes. 51 years old. 30 years in the teams. He'd seen enough operators to recognize patterns. The way the woman gripped that canvas bag, knuckles aligned, weight distributed through her core, elbows tucked at aficionados. That wasn't how a contractor carried tools. That was a weapons carry. That was muscle memory from hours on the range. Trask dropped the suspenders back on the table, turned to face his audience, Rebecca now serving as his backdrop. "Let me ask our guest a question," he raised his voice. "Ma'am, what's your call sign?" Silence. Rebecca continued organizing equipment. A web belt, magazine pouches that hadn't held ammunition since 1975. "Come on now, you're around SEALs all day. You must have picked up the lingo. What do your friends call you?" Trask's smile was cruel. "Museum lady? Antique?" Lieutenant Moss laughed so hard he had to wipe his eyes. "That's good, sir. Antique." Rebecca straightened, turned around slowly, looked at Commander Trask for 3 full seconds with an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. Then she spoke, voice quiet but clear enough to carry to every corner of the pavilion. "I don't have a call sign, Commander. I'm a contractor." "Right, of course." Trask nodded like she'd confirmed something important. "Just making sure we all understand who belongs here and who's just visiting." He walked back to his podium. The room settled, phones lowered. The briefing resumed. Rebecca Mills returned to her work, placing each piece of outdated equipment exactly where it needed to go. Face still blank, hands still steady. But Master Chief Kowalski kept watching. And in the corner, barely visible when her sleeve shifted while reaching for a canteen cover, he caught a glimpse of ink on her inner forearm. Dark blue, partially hidden. He couldn't make out the full image, but he saw enough to recognize military tattoo work, professional grade, the kind you got at shops near bases where the artists knew exactly what symbols meant what. The briefing continued for another 20 minutes. Commander Trask covered plate carrier fitting, weight distribution, tactical considerations for different operational environments. 43 SEALs took notes, asked questions, learned about equipment that might save their lives in 6 months when they deployed to places nobody would talk about afterward. And in the corner, surrounded by gear that belonged in a museum, Rebecca Mills worked in silence. 4 hours later, the sun beat down on the outdoor tactical range with the kind of heat that made asphalt shimmer and temper short. Rebecca knelt beside 3 comparison stations she'd spent the morning building, arranging vintage magazines next to modern polymer versions, old canvas pouches beside current Male attachments, demonstrating 6 decades of evolution in load-bearing equipment. The briefing had ended. Most of the SEALs dispersed to other training. A dozen remained, eating lunch in whatever shade they could find, talking in that particular way operators talk when they're comparing scars and deployments. Lieutenant Bradley Moss approached first. 29 years old, red hair already showing signs of thinning despite his youth, newest Trident recipient in the unit and desperate to prove he deserved it. Chief Petty Officer Vincent Harlow followed 3 steps behind, thick neck sunburned, multiple tattoos visible beneath his rolled sleeves. Rebecca saw them coming, kept working. She was organizing magazine pouches by decade, creating a visual timeline of how ammunition storage evolved from World War II through present day. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, each item placed precisely. Moss stopped 2 feet from her workspace, looked at Harlow, grinned, then he kicked. His boot caught the edge of the cardboard box holding her organized collection. 30 magazines, carefully sorted, tumbled across the concrete. Some rolled, some scattered. One 1967-era M16 magazine, zine, headed straight for a puddle of motor oil left by a maintenance vehicle. Rebecca moved. Her hand shot out, snatched the magazine from mid-air 6 inches above the oil. The movement was pure reflex, no thought, no hesitation. The kind of reaction time that comes from hundreds of hours on ranges where dropped magazines meant failed qualifications. Her eyes never left the work in front of her. The laughter died in Moss's throat. He'd seen that speed before, but only from team guys with thousands of rounds downrange. Lucky catch. Harlow's voice tried for casual, missed by a mile. Rebecca said nothing, set the magazine down carefully, began collecting the others, moving around Moss's boots like he was furniture instead of a person. Petty Officer Second Class Jordan Wright appeared from the shade of a nearby equipment shed, his brown face showing concern that his 24 years hadn't taught him to hide yet. "Sir, she's just doing her job." Moss turned on him. "Nobody asked you, Petty Officer. I'm just saying." "You're just saying nothing." Moss's voice carried the edge of insecurity, the sound of someone enforcing hierarchy because he wasn't sure of his place in it. "Get back to your station." Wright hesitated, looked at Rebecca. She gave him the smallest headshake. He left. Commander Trask emerged from the range office, aviator sunglasses reflecting the afternoon glare, uniform somehow still crisp despite the heat. He'd been watching through the window. Now he crossed the 50 yards of open concrete with the measured pace of someone who knew everyone would wait for him. "Problem here." "No problem, sir." Harlow nudged a magazine with his boot. Just clumsy contractor dropped her toys. Trask picked up one of the pouches, turned it over in his hands, read the faded label. M1956 load-bearing equipment, rifle ammunition pouch, cotton canvas, brass snap fastener. He looked at Rebecca. "But this label here says M1967 Alice gear." "It doesn't, sir." Rebecca's voice stayed level, professional. "That's M1956, different buckle system. The Alice designation." Nation didn't come until 1973 after they switched to nylon composition to address jungle rot issues from Vietnam. The brass oxidizes differently than the aluminum they used later. 3 seconds of silence. Trask lowered his sunglasses, stared at her. "How does a contractor know that?" "It's in the manual, sir." "Which manual?" "The one I read." She held his gaze, didn't blink. Historical equipment maintenance requires understanding composition and degradation patterns. It was a good lie, smooth, believable. Except that particular detail about the 1973 composition change wasn't in any manual available to civilians. It was buried in a classified mil-spec document from the Defense Logistics Agency that only procurement specialists and senior armorers ever saw. Master Chief Kowalski leaned against the equipment shed 30 yards away, arms crossed, watching. He'd come out to check on Wright and stayed for the show. Something bothered him about this woman, something familiar. The way she'd caught that magazine, the way she talked about technical specs like she'd carried the gear instead of just read about it. Trask dropped the pouch on the table. "Where'd you serve?" "I didn't, sir. I'm a contractor." "You've got military training somewhere. You move like it." "I move like someone who's been around military people for a long time, Commander. Osmosis." Harlow reached past Trask, grabbed the vintage web gear Rebecca had carefully arranged. "Let's test if this fossil shit actually works." He yanked, hard. The aged canvas ripped. A canteen fell, hit the concrete, shattered. Water spread across the hot surface, evaporating almost immediately. Rebecca stared at the broken pieces. Her jaw tightened. Just for a second, just barely visible, her hands formed fists. Then she controlled it, smoothed it away, went blank again. But Kowalski saw. And he saw something else. When her sleeve shifted as she knelt to collect the shattered canteen, he got a better look at that tattoo. A trident, crossed rifles beneath it, and what might have been a number, 5 or maybe 6. The angle was wrong. The fabric covered it again, too fast. "Careful with that." Moss's voice dripped false concern. "Fossil shit might crumble to dust." Rebecca picked up each piece of the broken canteen. The metal body, the plastic cap, the torn canvas cover. Her hands trembled. Just slightly, just enough for someone paying attention to notice. This canteen was 60 years old. It had survived Vietnam, survived storage, survived decades. The man who'd carried it through the jungle hadn't survived. His granddaughter inherited it. She'd given it to someone she loved before a mission. For luck. Luck hadn't worked. Before we see what happens next, a question. Have you ever been underestimated at work? Ever had someone mock what you do because they didn't understand its value? Drop a comment about it. And if you want to see how this plays out, hit subscribe, because what these SEALs are about to learn will change everything they think they know. Rebecca knelt there on the concrete, holding broken pieces of history in hands that had held worse things, surrounded by men who thought they knew what strength looked like. 2 hours later, the bleachers held 87 people. Word had spread. Equipment demonstration was supposed to be educational, comparing historical gear against modern systems for perspective on how technology improved operator capability. Now it was entertainment. Commander Trask stood at the demonstration table, Rebecca's carefully arranged displays repurposed as props for his lecture. He held up a modern plate carrier in his left hand, vintage M1956 web gear in his right, like justice scales weighing old against new. This is progress. He raised the plate carrier higher. This is history. The web gear sagged in his other hand. Any questions about which one keeps you alive? Laughter from the crowd. Phones out everywhere now. This was going on Instagram, TikTok, wherever sailors posted content their commands pretended not to see. Rebecca stood to the side, tool bag at her feet, face showing nothing. She'd collected the broken canteen pieces, wrapped them carefully in a rag, tucked them away. Now she waited for this demonstration to end so she could pack up and leave. Trask had other plans. "Tell you what, museum lady," he set both pieces of gear on the table. "Let's prove this junk is useless. Scientific method. You load a vintage rig faster than I load a modern plate carrier, I'll apologize in front of everyone here. You lose, you admit this antique crap has no place in modern warfare." The crowd went quiet. This wasn't lecture anymore. This was challenge. This was blood sport. Rebecca looked at him. "That's not necessary, Commander." "I think it is. You're taking up space in our facility, displaying equipment that teaches wrong lessons to young operators. If it's really viable, prove it." "I'm just here to maintain historical displays, sir, not compete." "Then you forfeit, which means you agree this gear is garbage." Trask smiled. "Unless you're scared." Petty Officer Wright shifted in his seat, looked at the Master Chief sitting 3 rows up. Kowalski's face was stone, but his eyes tracked every micro-expression on Rebecca's face. He'd seen operators pressured before. This woman was being backed into a corner, and cornered operators did 2 things. They folded or they fought. Rebecca took a breath. "What are the parameters?" "Standard load drill. Full kit, timed. I'll use current issue gear, you use your museum pieces." Trask gestured to the range safety officer. "Chief, set up the timer." The RSO, a 30-year veteran who'd seen enough stupid competitions to know this was another one, shrugged and activated the electronic timer system. Big LED display visible from the bleachers, accurate to hundredths of a second. Trask handed Rebecca a tangled mess of web gear. The straps were deliberately crossed, buckles fastened wrong, the whole thing configured backward. "This is what we found in storage. Good luck." Harlow snickered. Moss had his phone up, recording, already imagining the caption he'd write. The RSO checked both gear sets. Modern plate carrier was pristine, laid out flat, ready. Done in seconds. The vintage rig was a disaster. "Sir, this isn't exactly fair comparison." "It's realistic. Old gear degrades, gets tangled. That's why we don't use it." Trask stripped off his blouse, stood ready in tan t-shirt and cargo pants. Standard load time for modern PC is 45 seconds. I'll give her 60 for the antique stuff. Generous, sir. Harlow's voice carried across the range. Rebecca knelt, examined the tangled web gear. Her hands moved through the straps, identifying each component by touch. Suspenders, belt, ammunition pouches, canteen carrier, first aid pouch. The muscle memory was automatic. She'd worn this exact configuration for 6 months straight in a place she wasn't supposed to talk about. Ready positions. The RSO raised his hand. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, go. Trask moved with practiced efficiency. Plate carrier over the head. Pull down. Cinch the cummerbund. Adjust shoulder straps. Secure the quick release. Smooth. Professional. 28 seconds. The crowd watched him finish. Then they looked at Rebecca. She untangled the web gear in 11 seconds flat. Every strap separated, every buckle aligned. The whole system laid out properly like she'd done it 1,000 times before, because she had. Then she stood, donned the suspenders, clipped the belt, attached each pouch to its proper position with movements so automatic she could have done them blindfolded. The timer stopped. 31.4 seconds. The LED display showed the numbers. Nobody spoke. Moss's phone was still recording, but his grin had disappeared. She practiced. His voice came out uncertain. Had to have practiced. Trask stared at the timer. Again, with rifle transition. Sir, the RSO started to object. Again, rifle to pistol transition drill. Live fire. Trask walked to the weapons rack. Pulled down a Vietnam-era M16A1. The rifle was 60 years old, maintained but showing its age. Stock worn smooth from decades of hands. He grabbed a leather holster with a 1911 pistol. Modern SEAL standard is 2.8 seconds. Let's see. About what she does with antiques. Rebecca said nothing. Took the weapons. Checked the M16A1 with movements that were pure automatic response. Press check. Chamber inspection. Magazine well examination. Trigger reset test. Every step was textbook, the kind of weapons handling that came from qualification courses and combat deployments. Kowalski stood up. Commander, maybe... Sit down, Master Chief. The crowd had grown. Over 100 now. Officers from other commands, instructors, admin personnel who'd heard something interesting and came to watch. All of them recording. All of them waiting. The RSO set up the drill. Steel target at 15 yards. Start position with rifle at low ready. On buzzer, engage target twice. Transition to pistol, engage twice more. Timer stops on 4th hit. Rebecca stepped to the line. The M16A1 felt familiar in her hands. Too familiar. She could smell the gun oil, could feel the balance, could hear her team leader's voice from 3 years ago, talking her through malfunction drills in a compound outside Aden. The buzzer sounded. She brought the rifle up, sight picture instant, trigger press smooth. 2 rounds sans masse. Drop the rifle on its sling. Draw the 1911. Acquire sight picture. 2 more rounds. Both hits. The timer stopped. 2.1 seconds. The number appeared on the LED display. Larger than life. Impossible to argue with. Impossible to explain away. Silence. Complete silence. 100 people and nobody made a sound for 6 full seconds. Then Trask's jaw tightened. Again, moving targets with obstacles. Rebecca ejected the magazine, locked the slide back, cleared the chamber, set the pistol down with the slide locked open, magazine out, exactly as range safety protocols demanded. Then she stood there, breathing harder now, waiting. And 30 yards away, Master Chief Kowalski finally placed what had been bothering him. That weapon handling, those movements. He'd seen them before. In Ramadi, in Kandahar, in a dozen forward operating bases where the only people who moved like that were the ones who'd done it under fire so many times it became reflex. He pulled out his phone, not to record, to make a call. The next 50 minutes turned the demonstration range into a circus. 120 people packed the bleachers now. Someone had called the base newspaper. Someone else had notified the command duty officer. What started as routine equipment comparison had become something nobody could look away from. Test 1. Field strip and reassemble, blindfolded. The RSO provided a standard-issue M16A1, the same rifle Rebecca had just shot. Trask handed her a bandana. If you're really trained, you can do this blind. Rebecca tied the bandana over her eyes, sat cross-legged on the concrete, picked up the rifle. Her hands moved, magazine out, bolt locked back, chamber check by feel, takedown pins, upper receiver separation, bolt carrier group extraction, charging handle removal. Each component placed in precise locations around her like a clock face. Then the cleaning, a rag provided by the RSO. She wiped down each part, fingers identifying carbon buildup, checking for wear points by texture alone. Reassembly took 33 seconds. She handed the rifle back, removed the blindfold. The RSO conducted functions check. Perfect. 58 seconds total. The timer operator called it out. Seal standard is 90 seconds. Harlow stepped forward. Anyone can memorize assembly sequence. Then you do it, Chief. Trask handed him a blindfold. Harlow stripped and reassembled in 2 minutes 7 seconds. Made one mistake with the bolt carrier group that the RSO had to correct. His face went red when the crowd murmured. Test 2. Moving target engagement. They set up an advanced course. 5 steel targets at ranges from 25 to 100 yards. All targets on motorized sliders, moving at variable speeds. Standing position only. Vintage M16A1 with iron sights only. 10-round magazine. Rebecca stepped to the line. No warm-up, no practice shots. The buzzer sounded. She engaged like someone who'd done this when the targets shot back. Smooth trigger press. Controlled breathing. Leading the movement just enough. 9 hits out of 10. The miss was on the 100-yard mover by 2 inches left. 47 seconds. The RSO checked the targets through binoculars. 9 for 10, all center mass except the miss. Lieutenant Moss grabbed an M4 with a holographic sight and modern ammunition. My turn. He was SEAL qualified. He'd earned his trident. He knew his job. He scored 6 hits out of 10. Time was 53 seconds. The crowd wasn't murmuring anymore. They were dead silent, watching, calculating, trying to understand what they were seeing. Test 3. Close Quarters Combat Course. The Kill House. 12 rooms, 40 targets, mix of hostile and non-hostile. Full vintage load-bearing equipment, old steel helmet, 1911 pistol only. 7-round magazines. Standard DevGru time was 52 seconds. Regular SEAL team average was 68 seconds. Rebecca entered the course. The door closed behind her. The crowd watched the closed-circuit monitor. Grainy black and white footage showing her clear each roam with movements that belonged to someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Pie corners. Fatal funnel awareness. Smooth target transitions. Never breaking stance, never wasting movement. The final door opened. She stepped out, cleared the weapon, showed empty chamber to the RSO. 47 seconds. The RSO checked his tablet showing the electronic target sensors. 40 hits, 0 civilian casualties, 0 missed targets. Nobody spoke. Moss lowered his phone. His recording had stopped automatically after 15 minutes. He had over an hour of footage now. Trask's voice came out tight. "Where did you train?" "I didn't, sir. I'm a contractor." "That's impossible. Nobody shoots like that without—" "Without what, Commander?" Rebecca's voice stayed level, but something had changed. The deference was gone. Without years of training? Without combat experience? Without knowing exactly what this equipment can do because I've carried it when my life depended on it? The crowd shifted. People leaned forward. Master Chief Kowalski approached from the side, phone still in his hand. He'd been watching her clear corners in that kill house, watching her move. And he'd finally remembered where he'd seen that movement pattern before. In Ramadi, 2019, training Iraqi counter-terror forces. There'd been an intelligence liaison, small woman, quiet, moved like a ghost through rooms. The Iraqis called her something in Arabic that translated to the Silent One. He got closer. Rebecca was removing the steel helmet, wiping sweat from her face. Her sleeve rode up. The tattoo was visible now, fully visible. A Navy SEAL trident, crossed rifles beneath it, and below that a number 5. Except the 5 had a line through it, the way someone would mark a correction, the way someone would indicate they'd moved from one team to another. That's a Team 5 tattoo, Kowalski's voice carried, with a transfer mark. Every head turned. Rebecca's hand went to her sleeve, pulled it down. Too late. Trask grabbed her arm, not rough, but firm, pushed the sleeve up, stared at the ink. Where did you serve? What unit? Rebecca pulled her arm free. I'm a civilian contractor, Commander. I don't have to answer that. Stolen valor. She bought that tattoo. Harlow's voice lacked conviction now. Nobody buys tattoos like that. Kowalski moved closer. That's professional military work. That's done at shops near team bases. And that transfer mark, that's specific. That means she went from Team 5 to somewhere else. Somewhere that required striking the original unit designation. The crowd pressed closer. Security personnel appeared, trying to maintain order. The base newspaper photographer's camera clicked repeatedly. Trask pulled out his radio. Security to Training Range 3. Need credential verification on a contractor. He looked at Rebecca. ID, now. She pulled the laminated badge from her pocket, handed it over. 2 military police arrived within 3 minutes. One of them took the badge, scanned it with a handheld reader, frowned, scanned again. Sir, this badge shows secondary clearance. Clearance requirement. I need to verify through command. Do it. The MP walked away, speaking into his radio. The other MP stood near Rebecca, hand near his sidearm, not threatening but ready. 4 minutes passed. The crowd wouldn't leave. This was history happening. This was a story they'd tell for years. The MP returned. His face showed confusion. Sir, I need you to call the command duty officer directly. This is above my clearance level. What does that mean? It means her file is compartmented, sir. I can't access her employment history. It shows a gap from 2019 to 2023. 4 years of nothing. Just a notation. Classification level, Yankee White, compartmented. Trask went pale. Yankee White was presidential detail level. Compartmented meant special access programs. The kind of classifications that came with polygraphs and need-to-know restrictions. That's impossible. She's a contractor. Yes, sir, that's what her current status shows. But that gap… Hold on, stop scrolling. What you're about to witness is the moment everything changes. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because these SEALs are about to learn who they've been mocking for the last 6 hours. Rebecca stood there, surrounded by MPs, by commanders, by a crowd of operators who'd gone from laughing at her to realizing they might have made a catastrophic mistake. And her face still showed nothing at all. The range officer in charge arrived 12 minutes later. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, 41 years old, 20 years in service. The kind of officer who handled problems before they reached admirals. He took one look at the crowd, the cameras, the MPs flanking a civilian contractor, and knew this was already too big for him. Clear this range. Everyone not directly involved return to duties, now. The crowd dispersed slowly, too slowly. People wanted to see how this ended. But Hayes had 3 Master Chiefs backing him up, and Master Chiefs had ways of moving junior personnel that didn't require repeating orders. Within 5 minutes, only essential personnel remained. Hayes, the 2 MPs, Commander Trask, Master Chief Kowalski, the RSO, and Rebecca, standing with her arms crossed, face still blank, breathing controlled. Hayes held her contractor badge. Miss Mills, I need you to explain something. Your file shows top secret SCI clearance. That's appropriate for certain contractor positions, But when we try to verify your employment history, we hit a wall. 4 years classified at a level that requires flag officer authorization to access. He paused. So I'm asking directly, where were you from 2019 to 2023? I'm not authorized to discuss previous employment without proper clearance and need to know, sir. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give. Trask stepped forward. This is espionage. She's lying about her credentials. That tattoo is fake. Those skills are... He stopped. Even he couldn't finish that sentence. Nobody faked skills like that. Hayes pulled out his phone, dialed a number, waited. This is Lieutenant Commander Hayes, Range OIC at Coronado. I need to speak with the Spec War Command Duty Officer. Priority. Another pause. Yes, I'll hold. 20 seconds of silence. Everyone could hear the hold music through the phone's speaker. Some generic orchestral piece that felt surreal given the circumstances. Hayes's face changed. Yes, sir. I have a contractor. ID number 7743 Bravo. We're trying to verify... He stopped, listened. His eyes widened. Yes, sir. Understood, sir. How long? More listening. 10 minutes. Yes, sir. Nobody leaves. Yes, sir. He hung up. Looked at Rebecca like she'd just transformed into something else. Admiral Vance is inbound. ETA 10 minutes. Nobody moves, nobody leaves, nobody speaks to anyone outside this range. Why is a flag officer coming for a contractor? Moss had stayed, despite the dispersal order, hiding behind equipment until now. Hayes ignored him. He walked 20 feet away, made another call, this one quieter. But Kowalski was close enough to hear fragments. Yes, possible compromised cover. No, she hasn't confirmed. Displaying unit-level skills. Tattoo indicates team background. Rebecca remained still. Her right knee bounced slightly. The only tell. The only crack in otherwise perfect control. Trask paced. His career sense was screaming at him now. Flag officers didn't respond to contractor verification issues. Flag officers had aides who handled that. Unless this wasn't a contractor issue. Unless this was something else entirely. If you're really military, current or former, what's Admiral Vance's call sign? He said it like a challenge, like a trap. Call signs were personal, specific, often classified depending on the command. Rebecca looked at him, silent. See? She doesn't know because she's... Stormbreak. Rebecca's voice was quiet, certain. Admiral Patricia Vance, Rear Admiral Lower Half, Naval Special Warfare Command. Call sign, Stormbreak. Earned during her surface warfare days after she held station during a typhoon off Okinawa when 3 other ships broke formation. Complete silence. That call sign was compartmented information. Only operators who'd worked directly with Vance knew it. It wasn't in any directory, wasn't on any roster. You learned it by being read into operations where she had command authority. Trask's face drained of color. Hayes's phone rang. He answered, listened. Understood. Yes, ma'am. Hung up. She's landing in 4 minutes. Everyone, in formation, show some bearing. The sound of helicopter rotors grew from the west. An SH-60 Seahawk, the kind used for VIP transport. It came in fast, flared hard, touched down on the adjacent helipad with the precision of a pilot who'd done this 1,000 times. The rotors kept spinning. The side door opened. A figure emerged in Navy working uniform, rank insignia visible even at a distance. 2 stars. Rear Admiral Lower Half, Patricia Vance. 49 years old, 5'7", command presence that made her seem taller. Steel gray hair in a regulation bun. Navy cross ribbon on her chest, 3rd from the left, impossible to miss. She walked across the tarmac, with 4 aides struggling to keep pace. Reached the range. Everyone snapped to attention. Attention, except Rebecca. She was civilian status. She stayed standing, arms at her sides. Vance stopped 3 feet away, looked at her, face unreadable. Lieutenant Commander, why aren't you at attention? The words hit like artillery. Lieutenant Commander, not contractor. Not Miss Mills, Lieutenant Commander. Rebecca's body responded before her mind could stop it. Years of training, years of protocol. She snapped to attention, shoulders back, chin level, eyes forward. "Ma'am, I'm in civilian status. I didn't want to compromise." "Your name, rank, and unit, for the record, in front of witnesses." Rebecca's jaw tightened, her hands flexed. This was the moment. The exposure she'd been avoiding for 6 months. The end of her cover. The end of her peace. Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Garrett, serial number 6358-82847, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Gold Squadron. Development Group, DevGRU, the official name for SEAL Team 6, the unit that didn't officially exist, the unit that handled operations nobody talked about, the unit you couldn't apply for, only be selected into. Trask actually staggered. Moss made a sound like he'd been punched. Harlow went rigid. Vance turned to face the assembled personnel. This officer survived Operation Crimson Tide, Yemen, 2021. She was the sole survivor of a 6-person reconnaissance team ambushed by hostile forces. She carried 2 wounded teammates 11 kilometers under fire before exfil arrived. Both died before the helicopter landed. Her voice was parade ground loud, formal. She holds the Silver Star for Valor, 2 Bronze Stars with V device, Purple Heart, and 3 Navy Commendation Medals. She's been working under contractor cover for 6 months as part of approved recovery protocol. Silence. The kind of silence that follows revelation. Master Chief Kowalski stepped forward, came to attention, saluted Rebecca. "Ma'am, Master Chief Kowalski. I served with Senior Chief Michael Torres in Team 3, 2015-2017. He was a good man." Rebecca's face cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. Enough. Her eyes got wet. She returned the salute. "The best, Master Chief." Admiral Vance turned to Commander Hayes. How did her cover get compromised? Hayes stood straighter. "Ma'am, Commander Trask initiated equipment challenges that escalated into skill demonstrations. Lieutenant Commander Garrett performed at levels inconsistent with civilian contractor status. When questioned, she maintained cover until credential verification revealed classification anomalies." Vance's gaze moved to Trask. He looked like he wanted to melt into the concrete. "Commander, explain your actions." "Ma'am, I was conducting equipment demonstrations. She arrived with vintage gear that I felt sent wrong messages to junior operators about viable loadout configurations. I initiated comparison challenges to prove modern equipment superiority." "By humiliating someone you believed was a civilian contractor?" "I didn't." Trask stopped. Everyone had phones. Everyone had video. There was no denying what happened. "Yes, ma'am." "Did you sabotage equipment during these challenges?" Silence. Trask looked at the ground. Chief Harlow stepped forward. "Ma'am, I destroyed a vintage canteen. I thought it was just old surplus gear. But you destroyed it deliberately." "Yes, ma'am." Vance turned back to Rebecca. "Commander Garrett, that gear, the M1956 equipment, where did it come from?" Rebecca's voice came out quieter now. The formal military bearing couldn't hide the emotion anymore. "Senior Chief Michael Torres, ma'am, Gold Squadron Assault Team Leader. It belonged to his grandfather, Vietnam veteran. Torres carried it during training as a reminder of where we came from. He gave it to me before Operation Crimson Tide." She paused. "For luck. Tell them what happened." "Ma'am, I don't think." "That's an order, Commander." Rebecca took a breath. When she spoke, her voice had the flat affect of someone reciting trauma they'd repeated to therapists 100 times. 6-person team. Intelligence gathering mission outside Aden. We were compromised 3 hours into observation. Ambush from 3 sides. Senior Chief Torres took shrapnel from an RPG. Petty Officer Jackson lost both legs below the knee. The rest of the team provided cover while I established emergency exfil coordinates. She stopped, started again. Torres was conscious for the first 7 kilometers. He kept talking to keep me focused, told me about his grandfather, about carrying the old gear, about tradition and honor and what it meant to be a SEAL. He died while I was applying a tourniquet. Jackson died 20 minutes later. The helicopter arrived 43 minutes after initial contact. I was the only one who walked off. The range was silent except for the distant sound of the ocean and the helicopter's idling rotors. Vance's voice softened, just slightly. "Why contractor work, Commander? Why this cover?" "Because I can't pick up a rifle without seeing Torres bleeding out, ma'am. Because every time I clear a room, I'm back in that compound waiting for the ambush. Because I needed to be around operators again, around the community, but doing something that didn't require me to carry a weapon. Maintaining historical gear, teaching about equipment evolution. It let me serve without," her voice broke, "without having to go back." Kowalski spoke up. "Ma'am, Torres always said respect isn't about what you carry, it's about how you carry it. He would have been proud she kept the gear, until someone destroyed it." Vance's tone went cold again. She turned to Trask, Harlow, and Moss. "You three, my office, 0600 tomorrow. Bring your service records and written statements explaining today's events." Trask opened his mouth, closed it. "Yes, ma'am. You publicly humiliated a decorated combat veteran. You mocked sacred gear that belonged to a fallen SEAL. You created situations that could have triggered severe trauma responses in someone recovering from PTSD. Vance stepped closer to Trask. You did this because you assumed someone in contractor clothing couldn't possibly be worthy of respect. That assumption nearly destroyed an officer I personally approved for recovery protocol. Ma'am, we didn't know. You didn't ask. That's worse." Vance turned to Hayes. "I want full written reports from every witness. I want all video footage preserved as evidence. And I want a command climate investigation into how this unit treats support personnel." "Yes, ma'am." Lieutenant Moss stepped forward, hands shaking. "Admiral, I filmed it. I laughed. I participated. I'm as guilty as Commander Trask." "Yes, you are. You'll also be at my office tomorrow." Chief Harlow remained rigid, face showing no emotion. Old school. He'd accept punishment without complaint. But his eyes kept drifting to Rebecca, to the broken canteen pieces she'd wrapped carefully in a rag that still sat on the equipment table. Vance walked to the table, picked up the rag, unwrapped it carefully. The shattered metal, the torn canvas cover. 60 years of history destroyed in a moment of casual cruelty. "Commander Garrett, I'm authorizing full restoration through our historical preservation unit. If it can't be repaired, we'll find an identical replacement." "That's not necessary, ma'am." "Yes, it is. Because this isn't just about you. It's about every person we've lost, every sacrifice we've honored, every tradition we maintain so we remember who we are." Vance rewrapped the pieces. "Torres's family will be notified that his gear was damaged in training and is being restored at command expense. They'll also be told that you maintained it with honor." Rebecca's control finally broke. Tears ran down her face. She didn't sob, didn't make noise, just stood there at attention with water streaming down her cheeks. Vance handed the wrapped pieces back to her. "You're a SEAL, Commander. You'll always be a SEAL. Working as a contractor doesn't change that. And anyone who says otherwise answers to me." She stepped back, raised her voice. "All personnel present will report to their chain of command that Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Garrett is operating under approved cover for medical recovery. Anyone who compromises her operational security, spreads rumors, or treats her with anything less than the respect her rank and service deserve will face non-judicial punishment. Am I clear?" "Yes, man." The response came from everyone in unison. Vance turned to leave, then stopped. Looked at Trask one more time. "Commander, you wanted to prove modern equipment superiority. Instead, you proved that arrogance is still the most dangerous thing an operator can carry. Dismissed." She walked back to the helicopter. The rotors spun up. The Seahawk lifted off, turned west, disappeared into the afternoon sun. Nobody moved for 10 seconds. Then Kowalski approached Rebecca, still standing at attention, still crying silently. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely." "Granted, Master Chief." "Torres would have kicked your ass for crying. Then he would have made you run the O course with full kit until you remembered you're tougher than this." Rebecca laughed. It came out half sob, but it was real. "He would have, wouldn't he?" "Yes, ma'am, he absolutely would have." 24 hours changed everything. Commander Jason Trask emerged from Admiral Vance's office at 7:23 with a manila envelope containing his future. Relieved of training command effective immediately. Reassigned to Naval Station Norfolk Administrative Logistics Division. Letter of reprimand permanently filed. His career wasn't over officially, but everyone knew promotion boards saw those letters. He'd never make captain. He'd never command operators again. He walked across the compound with the envelope under his arm, past groups of SEALs who stopped talking when he approached. Word had spread. The whole base knew. Probably the whole community knew by now. He'd humiliated a DevGru operator. There were mistakes you recovered from in the teams. This wasn't one of them. Lieutenant Bradley Moss got 30 days restriction to base, mandatory equal opportunity training, and removal from the next deployment rotation. His platoon would go to Southeast Asia without him. He'd spend 6 months behind a desk while his teammates got combat experience that would define their careers. At 29, that gap might be insurmountable, uncountable. Chief Petty Officer Vincent Harlow was reduced in rank to Petty Officer First Class. 42 years old, dropped back to a pay grade he'd held 15 years ago. Transferred out of Naval Special Warfare entirely, reassigned to a surface warfare unit in San Diego. For a man who'd spent 20 years in the teams, it was exile. None of them expected sympathy. They'd all seen the videos by now, watched themselves mock someone they'd assumed was beneath them, watched themselves destroy gear belonging to a fallen hero. It was distributed across the command as a training example of what not to do. Rebecca spent the morning in the command maintenance shop, watching 2 senior armorers examine Torres's broken canteen. Chief Warrant Officer Martinez, 53 years old, 32 years maintaining SEAL beer, handled the pieces like religious artifacts. The metal body can be welded. Canvas cover needs replacement, but we've got period-correct material in storage. He looked up at her. "Ma'am, I knew Torres. He came through here before that Yemen deployment. Had me check over this exact gear. Said his grandfather survived Vietnam with it, and he wanted to honor that. He carried it every training rotation after that. I remember. He was particular about maintenance. Said gear was like tradition. You kept it alive by using it properly." Martinez set the pieces down carefully. "We'll have this restored in 72 hours. Good as new. Better maybe. We'll reinforce the stress points." "Thank you, Chief." She left the shop, walked across the compound. People saluted now. Junior enlisted who'd never acknowledged her before snapped to attention. Officers she'd cleaned offices for nodded respectfully. The change was jarring. Yesterday she was invisible. Today she couldn't walk 20 feet without recognition. Lieutenant Moss found her outside the chow hall at 11:47. He approached carefully, staying 10 feet back until she acknowledged him. "Ma'am, permission to speak." "Granted." "I was wrong. Completely, totally wrong." He paused. "I filmed you because I thought it was funny. I thought you were just some contractor who didn't belong. I let Commander Trask's attitude influence me instead of thinking for myself." Rebecca waited. She'd heard the start of this speech before. The question was whether he'd actually learned something or just regretted consequences. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I understand what I did wrong. Not just mocking you, not just breaking the gear, but filming it, turning someone's pain into entertainment. That's who I became yesterday, and I'm ashamed of it." "What are you going to do different, Lieutenant?" "I'm using my restriction time to volunteer with the transition program, help operators dealing with PTSD and reintegration. Figure if I can't deploy, I can at least support the people coming back." He met her eyes. "And I deleted every video. Contacted everyone I sent them to and asked them to delete too. I know it's too late, but it's a start." Rebecca's voice stayed neutral. "But don't do it for me. Do it because it's right. Do it because someday you'll be the senior guy, and junior operators will follow your example." "Yes, ma'am." He left. Rebecca watched him go. 29 years old. He'd learn from this or he wouldn't. Time would tell. Chief Harlow approached at 1320, now wearing first-class rank insignia. He didn't come close, just stood at a respectful distance until she turned. "Ma'am?" "Petty officer." The demotion hung between them. He didn't flinch from it. "No excuses. I destroyed your gear. I knew it was important. That's why I did it. Thought breaking your stuff would prove something." He paused. "Proves I'm an idiot." Rebecca said nothing. "I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted to say I'm sorry, and..." He pulled something from his pocket, a small wooden case, opened it. Inside was a Vietnam-era Navy commendation medal, tarnished but intact. My father's. He was a Seabee in Da Nang, 1968. Stepped on a mine, lost his leg. This was the only decoration he ever got. Kept it his whole life. Gave it to me before he died. He held it out. "It's not a replacement. Nothing could replace what I destroyed. But I wanted you to have something that mattered to someone who served. Maybe, I don't know, maybe tradition means enough that even a broken one can get passed on." Rebecca stared at the medal. "I can't take your father's decoration. He'd want you to have it. He always said the guys who came home had a duty to the ones who didn't. You came home. Torres didn't. That makes you responsible for his memory." Harlow's voice roughened. "I disrespected that. This is how I make it right." She took the case, closed it carefully. "I'll add it to the memorial display, with your father's name, so people remember his service too." Harlow nodded, came to attention, saluted. She returned it. He left without another word. That evening, Admiral Vance held an informal gathering. 200 personnel in the team compound common area. She stood on a small platform, no podium, no ceremony. Just a flag officer talking to her people. "Today, we restored Lieutenant Commander Garrett's vintage equipment. We also established the Senior Chief Michael Torres Memorial Fund for historical gear preservation and military tradition education. Commander Garrett will oversee it." Applause. Rebecca stood to the side, uncomfortable with attention, but present because Vance had ordered it. But this isn't about one officer or one incident. It's about who we are. Vance's voice carried. "We're warriors. We pride ourselves on being the best. But strength without humility is just arrogance. Skill without respect is just cruelty. If we judge people by appearance instead of character, we're no better than the enemies we fight." She looked directly at Rebecca. "This officer served in places she can't discuss, did things she'll never talk about, lost teammates she'll never forget. And when she came back broken, she chose to heal by serving in the humblest way possible. That's not weakness. That's the hardest kind of strength." Master Chief Kowalski stepped forward. "Admiral, I served with Torres. He had a saying, 'Respect is earned by what you do, not what you wear.' I'd like permission to share his story with the junior operators. Make sure they understand why traditions matter." "Permission granted, Master Chief. In fact, I'm making it part of the official training pipeline. Every SEAL candidate will learn about the cost of assumptions and the importance of respecting every person in our community." Petty Officer Second Class Jordan Wright stood up. "Ma'am, I tried to defend Commander Garrett yesterday. Got shut down. I should have done more." "You did what you could, Petty Officer. That took courage. Don't lose that moral compass just because someone senior tells you to." Vance paused. "In fact, I'm assigning you as Commander Garrett's assistant for the Memorial Fund. Learn from someone who knows what right looks like." Wright's face showed surprise, then pride. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." The gathering ended at 1900. People approached Rebecca throughout the evening. Junior SEALs asking questions about old gear. Senior operators sharing memories of Torres. Female sailors thanking her for proving women belonged in any role they earned. She handled it with grace, answered questions, shared stories. But Kowalski watched her hands. They trembled slightly. Her breathing was controlled but faster than normal. The crowd was overwhelming her. He cleared a path. "Ma'am needs some air. Give her space." They did. SEALs understood boundaries. She walked outside, sat on a bench overlooking the ocean. Kowalski followed, sat 10 feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to give her room. "You okay, ma'am?" "PTSD doesn't have an off switch, Master Chief. Good days and bad days. Today was hard. But you made it through." Torres always said survival was about putting one foot forward even when you wanted to stop. Guess I'm still doing that. 2 weeks later, the demonstration pavilion looked different. The bleachers held 40 students, mixture of SEAL candidates, intelligence personnel, and support staff. No phones out, no mockery, just people here to learn. Rebecca stood at the instructor podium wearing her restored vintage gear over civilian clothes. The M1956 suspenders, the canvas pouches, Torres's repaired canteen hanging from her belt. Chief Warrant Officer Martinez had done perfect work. You couldn't tell it had ever been broken. She began without introduction. "This load-bearing equipment weighs 8 pounds fully loaded. Your modern plate carrier weighs 35 pounds minimum. Speed matters. Mobility matters. Sometimes old solutions solve new problems." Petty Officer Wright sat front row, taking notes, now officially her assistant. Several reformed skeptics filled the other seats. A female SEAL candidate in the back, 3 logistics officers who'd never touched tactical gear, and Master Chief Kowalski in the corner, arms crossed, watching with approval. Torres, Senior Chief Michael Torres, carried this gear because his grandfather survived Vietnam with it. That's not nostalgia. That's understanding that gear represents the people who trusted their lives to it. She held up a magazine pouch. This pouch held ammunition that kept a Marine alive through Hue City. That history matters. A young sailor raised his hand. "Ma'am, but modern gear is better, right? More protective?" "Better for what? If you're clearing buildings in Fallujah, yes, you want plates. If you're running reconnaissance in mountains where every pound matters, maybe you want canvas and speed." She paused. The mistake isn't choosing modern or vintage. It's assuming one solution works for every mission. She spent 30 minutes demonstrating gear configurations, weight distribution, historical context. The students asked genuine questions, took real notes. Nobody laughed. Nobody filmed for entertainment. During a break, the female candidate approached. 23 years old, finished buds 3 months ago, facing the reality of being one of 6 women in a community of 3,000 men. "Ma'am, they told me women can't handle heavy gear loads, that we're too small." Rebecca unclipped Torres's LBE, handed it to her. "Put it on. Run the obstacle course." E. Let results speak. The candidate hesitated, then donned the gear, adjusted the straps, took off running. She struggled on the rope climb, compensated with technique, made it through in decent time, breathing hard but successful. How'd it feel? Heavy, but manageable. I had to adjust my approach, but it worked. Exactly. Different doesn't mean incapable. It means adapt and overcome. Rebecca took the gear back. Never let anyone tell you what you can't do. Prove it with action, not arguments. The candidate nodded, something shifting in her expression, confidence replacing doubt. Classes continued through the week. Rebecca taught vintage techniques still relevant today. Noise discipline with canvas gear versus Velcro, weight distribution for long movements, historical tactics that modern doctrine forgot. Her students learned not just about equipment, but about respecting the people who came before. Commander Trask appeared once, walking past on his way to the admin building. He wore his uniform without the warfare insignia that marked operators. Just another staff officer now. He glanced at the class, at Rebecca teaching, then kept walking. His face showed regret, but he didn't stop. Some bridges burned completely. Lieutenant Moss volunteered at the transition center every afternoon, helping operators deal with PTSD, learning to recognize trauma, understanding that the toughest battles happened after coming home. Wright saw him there once, talking quietly with a former SEAL who couldn't hold a job, couldn't sleep, couldn't adjust. Moss looked different, humbler. Maybe he'd learn, maybe not, but he was trying. Petty Officer First Class Harlow transferred out on a Tuesday morning. He stopped by Rebecca's office before leaving. "Ma'am, permission to speak?" "Granted. I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know I requested assignment to a unit training new recruits. Figure maybe I can teach them what I learned the hard way, about respect, about assumptions." He paused. "About what it costs when you forget those things." "That's good work, Petty." "Thomas, officer. Important work. My father used to say, everyone deserves a second chance to do better, even idiots like me." He smiled slightly. "I'll try not to waste it." "Fair winds, Harlow." "Fair winds, ma'am." Friday afternoon, Admiral Vance appeared at Rebecca's office unannounced. Wright jumped to attention. Rebecca stood, less surprised. Flag officers showing up meant something. "Walk with me, Commander." They left the building, headed toward the beach. Vance walked in silence for 2 minutes before speaking. "JSOC has a request. They're planning an operation in terrain similar to Yemen, mountainous, extended reconnaissance. They need historical tactical consultation. Specifically, they want to know if lighter vintage load configurations might work better than modern heavy plate systems." Rebecca's hands clenched. "Ma'am, I'm not cleared for operational planning anymore." "You would be, if you accepted." Vance stopped walking. "I'm not ordering you. I'm asking. This is strictly voluntary. But your experience, both historical knowledge and combat experience in similar terrain, makes you uniquely qualified." "When?" "Planning phase starts in 2 weeks. You'd work with the task force, provide recommendations, maybe train selected personnel on vintage techniques. No deployment, no combat, just consultation." Rebecca looked at the ocean, watched the waves, felt Taurus's canteen against her hip. The weight was familiar now, comforting. A reminder that she'd survived when he hadn't, and that survival meant something. "He'd want me to go, to use what happened so maybe others come back when their teammates don't." "That's not an answer, Commander." "Yes, ma'am, I'll do it." Vance nodded. "Report to JSOC Liaison Monday, 800. They'll read you in." She started to leave, then turned back. "Rebecca, what you're doing here, teaching these kids, building the memorial fund, that's important too. Don't think operational work is the only way to serve." "I know, ma'am, but maybe I can do both. Honor the past by protecting the future." Torres would be proud. "I hope." "Peso, ma'am." That evening, Rebecca stood in the memorial room they'd established. Photos of fallen SEALs lined the walls. Torres's picture prominent next to his grandfather's Vietnam-era photo. Below it, the display case held his restored gear alongside Harlow's father's Navy Commendation Medal. A plaque read, "In memory of those who carried the weight so others wouldn't have to." Wright found her there. "Ma'am, class starts in 10 minutes." "I know, just checking something." She touched the display case glass. "You ever wonder why we keep doing this? Teaching about old gear, telling old stories? Because tradition matters? Because the people matter. The gear is just canvas and metal, but the people who carried it, who died carrying it, who passed it on, that's what we preserve. Not equipment, memory." She turned from the display. "Make sure every student understands that. The gear is a tool. The lesson is about respect." "Yes, ma'am." They walked to class together. The pavilion held 50 students now. Word had spread. Rebecca's course was mandatory for candidates, but senior operators were volunteering to attend. Learning from someone who'd proven that assumptions could be deadly. She began the lesson. "This is an M1956 ammunition pouch. Standard issue from 1956 to 1973. Canvas construction, brass hardware. It carried 20 magazines. Simple, effective, proven." She held it up. But this specific pouch belonged to Senior Chief Michael Torres. Before him, his grandfather, who survived Vietnam. Before that, maybe someone else. We don't know the full history, but we know that every person who carried this trusted their life to it. The room was silent, listening, learning. When you choose your gear, modern or vintage, expensive or simple, remember that it's not about what's best. It's about what works for your mission, your team, your situation. And always, always remember the people who came before. The ones who figured out these lessons in places where mistakes were fatal. A hand raised. Young sailor, fresh from basic. Ma'am, how do we honor them? By being better than we were yesterday. By respecting everyone we serve with. By never assuming we know someone's story just by looking at them. Rebecca paused. And by teaching the next generation these same lessons, so the people we lost aren't forgotten. The class continued until 1800. Students left with new understanding, new respect, new awareness that gear told stories if you listened. Kowalski stayed after. Ma'am, heard you're going back to operational consulting. Just planning, no field work. It's a start. Torres always said the best operators were the ones who came back changed but not broken. You're finding your way back. Still have bad nights, Master Chief. Still wake up at 0300 seeing him bleed out. That won't stop. PTSD doesn't have an expiration date. But you're teaching these kids, consulting on operations, making Torres's death mean something. That's how you survive. One step forward, even when it's hard. Rebecca smiled slightly. He said that exact thing, right before the ambush. Keep moving forward, Bex. That's all anyone can do. He was right. He usually was. They walked outside together. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky orange and purple. Somewhere out there, operators were conducting missions nobody would talk about. Some would come home, some wouldn't. And people like Rebecca would be there to remember them, teach about them, honor them. She touched Torres's canteen one more time. The metal was warm from the sun, solid, real, a reminder that she'd survived for a reason, even if that reason was just to make sure he wasn't forgotten. Fair winds, Torres, she whispered. I'm still moving forward. The ocean answered with waves against the shore, constant, eternal, like memory. If this story taught you something about judging others, about respect, about the weight we all carry, leave a comment. Share a time you were wrong about someone. Subscribe for more stories about the people behind the uniform. And remember, never underestimate the quiet ones. They might be carrying more than you can imagine.